If you're not an ordinary woman, don't shrink to fit ordinary expectations. You weren't made for average. You weren't built for silence. You weren't born to walk paths paved by others. You were meant to carve your own. Self-worth is not something handed to you by the world. It is not wrapped in praise, likes, or applause. It is not something that fluctuates with someone else's opinion or attention. Real self-worth begins where the noise ends, in the quiet space where you meet yourself, without filters, without masks, without performance. It is the belief that who you are, at your core, is already enough. Not because of what you've achieved, how you look, or how others feel about you, but simply because you exist. So many spend their lives chasing validation like a finish line, convinced that once they gain enough recognition or admiration, they'll finally feel worthy. But external validation is like a mirage. It feels real for a moment, but it disappears as quickly as it arrives. It demands more and more of you without ever delivering peace. When your worth is tied to performance or approval, your confidence becomes fragile, easily shaken by criticism, comparison, or rejection. You begin to shift just to be liked. You begin to chase, to prove, to beg, and in doing so, you lose the essence of who you truly are. Self-worth, on the other hand, doesn't need an audience. It doesn't wait for applause. It doesn't ask for permission. It is a quiet, powerful knowing. It is the voice inside that says, I am enough. Even on your worst days, it's the strength to walk away from what doesn't honor you, not because you're too good for it, but because you finally understand your value. It's the courage to take up space, to speak your truth, to hold your boundaries, not to push others away, but to protect your peace. When you live from internal worth, your actions begin to change. You stop chasing people who don't see your value. You stop tolerating environments that drain you. You stop making yourself smaller just to fit into places that were never meant to hold you. You choose differently, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You invest your time, energy, and love into things that reflect the truth of your worth, not the illusion of scarcity. It also frees you from the comparison trap. You no longer look sideways to measure your life. You no longer compete with others for space or status. You realize that someone else's beauty, brilliance, or success doesn't subtract from your own. There is room for everyone to shine, and your light doesn't need to dim for someone else's to burn. Self-worth builds a foundation so strong that even when the world is silent, you still stand tall. Even when no one is watching, you still show up fully. Even when it's hard, you still honor yourself. This kind of worth is built over time. It is nurtured through self-awareness, through compassion, through the intentional decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. It is built in the moments you keep your promises to yourself. In the times you say no and don't explain why. In the days you show up imperfectly, but don't shrink back. Self-worth is not a destination you arrive at. It is a practice you choose over and over until it becomes who you are. And when it does, everything changes. You stop looking for someone to save you because you realize you've been your own anchor all along. You stop needing the world to tell you you're enough because you've already told yourself, and you believed it. High standards are not about being difficult, arrogant, or overly picky. They are a direct reflection of self-respect. When you set high standards for how you allow yourself to be treated, for the kind of environments you place yourself in, and for the level of effort you bring to your own life, you're not being unreasonable. You're simply honoring your own worth. You're saying to the world, I know what I bring to the table, and I won't settle for less than what aligns with that truth. Many people are taught to compromise constantly in order to be accepted. They're told to be agreeable, to lower expectations, to tolerate discomfort for the sake of belonging or being liked. But belonging that requires self-abandonment is not belonging. It's self-betrayal. When you lower your standards to fit into someone else's comfort zone, you end up shrinking your potential and silencing your intuition. High standards, on the other hand, are not walls to keep people out. They're filters that allow the right people in people who recognize your value, match your energy, and respect your boundaries without you having to constantly explain them. Having high standards doesn't mean expecting perfection. It means requiring alignment. It means expecting consistency, respect, honesty, and mutual effort in your relationships. It means no longer accepting breadcrumbs of affection, half-hearted apologies, or empty promises. It means recognizing red flags early and having the strength to walk away. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace, your time, and your future to waste them on situations that drain you. When you respect yourself deeply, you start holding yourself to a higher standard as well. You no longer let yourself coast through life. You aim for growth, not just comfort. You show up on the days you don't feel like it. You commit to habits that stretch you and protect routines that nourish you. Self-respect isn't just about how others treat you. It's about how you treat yourself. It's in the boundaries you uphold, the goals you chase, and the silence you keep when gossip tries to pull you in. It's about choosing what builds you instead of what breaks you down. High standards may make you feel alone at times. They may lead to hard decisions, lonely seasons, or uncomfortable shifts. But what they also do is clear the path for real, fulfilling, and authentic connections. Relationships built on truth, not convenience. You may lose people who preferred the version of you that bent over backwards, stayed quiet, or accepted less. But you'll gain something greater: peace, purpose, and the presence of those who truly get you. There's strength in being selective. There's dignity in walking away from what doesn't match your value. And there's freedom in knowing that you don't have to convince anyone to see your worth. You are not for everyone, and you're not supposed to be. When you stop settling, life stops giving you less. When you raise the bar, you raise the quality of your life. Having high standards isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being better for yourself. It's a declaration that you've done the inner work, that you've learned from your pain, and that you're no longer willing to compromise your peace to accommodate people who don't know how to treat you. It's a quiet, steady kind of power, and once you live from that place, you'll never go back to settling for less. Growth is not just about adding new skills, relationships, or habits. It's just as much about letting go. Real transformation doesn't come from accumulation alone. It comes from release. We often think we need to keep piling on more goals, more responsibilities, more achievements to feel like we're evolving. But the truth is, some of the most profound growth happens when we have the courage to let go of what no longer serves us. Letting go means choosing freedom over familiarity. It means stepping out of comfort zones that once felt safe but have now become cages. This process can be painful because we are creatures of habit, and we often form attachments to people, places, routines, and even mindsets that once protected us. But what protected you in one season can limit you in the next. If you want to grow, you have to be willing to release the version of you that clings to safety over progress. Letting go is not a sign of weakness, it is an act of power. It takes incredible strength to admit that something isn't right anymore. It takes wisdom to recognize when a friendship, a job, a habit, or even a dream has run its course. Holding on out of fear, guilt, or obligation only prolongs the pain. Growth demands space for new insights, new connections, and new opportunities to enter. And space only comes when you release what's crowding your life. Sometimes what you have to let go of is not a person, but a version of yourself. The one who stayed silent to keep the peace. The one who settled for less to avoid conflict. The one who doubted their worth. You have to shed layers that were built out of survival so you can make room for a self that lives from purpose. Shedding old selves can feel like loss, but it's actually the doorway to becoming who you were always meant to be. Letting go often begins with forgiveness. Of others, yes, but also of yourself. Growth doesn't come with perfection. It comes with grace. Maybe you stayed too long in a toxic situation. Maybe you ignored your intuition. Maybe you failed to show up for yourself. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and let it go. Carrying the weight of regret doesn't make you stronger. It slows your stride. Forgiveness is the release valve that allows you to move forward lighter and wiser. There's also the letting go of timelines, the idea that you should be somewhere else by now, doing something different, being someone better. Growth is not linear, and it doesn't follow anyone's schedule but your own. Trusting your journey means detaching from expectations that don't match your reality. You are exactly where you need to be to learn what you need to learn. Let go of the pressure to perform and allow yourself to progress with presence and patience. Letting go is an ongoing practice. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily choice to surrender what feels heavy in exchange for what brings clarity. It's an act of alignment, choosing what matches your values, your energy, and your future. And the more you release, the more you make room for peace, purpose, and power. Growth begins when you stop dragging old baggage into new chapters. It begins the moment you decide to trade control for trust, fear for faith, and pain for purpose. Letting go is not the end, it's the invitation to rise. It's the clearing that makes space for something greater to take root. And once you begin to feel the lightness of that release, you'll wonder why you ever held on so tightly. Authenticity is one of the most powerful things a person can possess, yet it is often the first thing people feel pressured to sacrifice. From a young age, many are conditioned to fit in, to conform, to be agreeable, to avoid standing out too much or rocking the boat. The world often rewards polish over honesty, performance over truth, but in that subtle pressure to conform, something sacred is lost. The spark of individuality, the strength of your unique voice, the freedom to be who you truly are, those things begin to dim. And when your authenticity is dimmed, your power is diluted. Being authentic doesn't mean being loud, rebellious, or confrontational. It means being rooted in your truth. It means knowing who you are, what you value, and what you will no longer shrink to fit. It's choosing to live and speak from a place of alignment, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular, even when it makes others uncomfortable, because your truth is not something to be negotiated. It is something to be honored. There will be moments when being yourself will cost you something, perhaps a relationship, an opportunity, or a sense of belonging in a place that was never built for the real you. But whatever you lose by being authentic is never truly a loss. It is simply a clearing, a shedding of spaces and people that were never meant to hold you. What you gain in return is far more valuable: self-respect, peace, and the magnetism of living a life that's fully yours. When you dim your authenticity to fit in, to please others, or to avoid judgment, you're sending a message to yourself that your real self isn't worthy of love or acceptance. That's a message that chips away at confidence, silences creativity, and builds inner conflict. But when you choose to show up as yourself, imperfect, evolving, and real, you affirm that you are enough, just as you are, and that creates an inner alignment that no external validation can replace. Authenticity also invites deeper, more meaningful connection. People are drawn to realness, not to the perfect version you present, but to the one who dares to be vulnerable, honest, and human. When you show up authentically, you give others permission to do the same. You create space for relationships that are built on trust rather than performance. You stop attracting what is meant for the version of you you're pretending to be, and start attracting what is meant for the person you actually are. Living authentically requires courage, because the world often tries to mold people into categories, labels, and expectations. But courage doesn't mean fearlessness. It means choosing truth even when fear is present. It means showing up again and again for your values, your vision, and your voice, regardless of how others may respond. Over time, that kind of courage becomes a quiet strength, a powerful presence that cannot be ignored or shaken. You were not born to blend in or shrink to make others comfortable. You were born to be seen, to be heard, and to leave a mark that only your authenticity can make. The world needs your originality, your perspective, your voice. It needs people who are willing to live without masks, to lead with integrity, and to love without pretense. So never dim your light to soothe someone else's insecurities. Never tone down your truth to avoid conflict. Never pretend to be less than you are to keep the peace. Your authenticity is not a flaw. It's your superpower, and the more you live from it, the more you begin to feel the peace and power that comes from walking in your truth. You don't need to be accepted by everyone. You only need to be accepted by yourself, because once you are fully at home in who you are, nothing and no one can make you feel like you need to hide again. Power and softness are often misunderstood as opposites, as if one must choose between being strong or being gentle. This false dichotomy has led many to suppress one in order to embrace the other, believing that strength requires hardness or that kindness signals weakness. But real power isn't loud or aggressive, and true softness is never fragile. In fact, the two not only can coexist, they enhance one another. The most impactful people are often those who have mastered the balance between fierce resolve and open-hearted compassion. To be powerful is to know who you are, to stand firm in your values, and to lead with integrity. It is the ability to hold your ground, to make decisions with clarity, and to influence others not through fear, but through example. But power without softness becomes harsh. It turns into dominance, intimidation, or control. It loses its humanity. Without empathy or emotional intelligence, power becomes cold and disconnected. This is why softness is not only compatible with power, it is essential to it. Softness is not weakness. It is the courage to remain kind in a world that often values harshness. It is the quiet strength to listen before responding, to forgive when it would be easier to hold a grudge, to show patience when everything inside you wants to react. Softness is resilience dressed in grace. It's the strength to keep your heart open, even after being hurt. It's the presence to comfort others while holding your own boundaries. When someone possesses both power and softness, they become a force that's grounded and magnetic, unshakable and approachable at the same time. Many have been taught that to be respected, especially in positions of leadership or authority, they must suppress emotion or become unyielding. But emotional suppression is not strength. It is fear disguised as control. The truly strong person allows themselves to feel fully, to express vulnerability without shame, and to connect with others in a way that fosters trust and mutual respect. They understand that strength isn't about being unaffected. It's about being centered enough to respond rather than react. That level of self-control and awareness is what real power looks like. On the other hand, people who embody softness often underestimate their influence. They may think they have to harden themselves to survive or to be taken seriously, but their empathy, intuition, and ability to connect deeply with others are not traits to be hidden. They are gifts that elevate leadership, nurture relationships, and inspire growth. Softness brings balance to ambition. It reminds power to be human. The most transformative presence is one that blends these two traits seamlessly. Imagine the leader who listens as much as they speak, the friend who challenges you while still holding space for your pain, the individual who walks into a room and brings both calm and command. That is what it looks like when power and softness coexist. It is a presence that uplifts without overpowering, that leads without demanding, and that loves without condition. You don't have to choose between being powerful or being kind. You can speak with authority and still carry tenderness in your voice. You can chase goals with fire in your spirit and still offer your hand to help someone else up. The ability to balance both makes you dynamic, trustworthy, and deeply respected. It makes you capable of influencing change, not by force, but by resonance. So allow yourself to be both. Be the person who can hold firm boundaries and still offer grace. Be the one who speaks with purpose and listens with intention. In a world that often asks you to choose sides, choose to be whole. That wholeness, where strength and softness live together, is where your deepest power lies. You are not a copy. You were not created to fit into someone else's mold, to mimic the patterns of those around you, or to dilute yourself just to be accepted. From the moment you were born, you carried within you a signature that no one else in this world possesses. Your thoughts, your heart, your voice, your presence. And that's not by accident. It's by design. The world doesn't need another version of someone else. It needs the one of a kind expression that only you can offer. Being unique isn't about trying to stand out for the sake of attention. It's about understanding that your individuality is your strength. You weren't meant to be easily categorized, compared, or understood by everyone. You are here to live a life that feels true to you, to follow a rhythm that aligns with your soul, and to make decisions that reflect your core, not the expectations placed upon you. When you start to embrace this truth, you begin to walk differently, speak differently, and exist with a deeper sense of confidence. But in a world driven by comparison, it can be easy to forget this. Social media, societal standards, cultural norms, they all have a way of making you feel like you're not enough unless you fit a certain image or achieve a particular status. You start to measure your worth by metrics that were never meant to define you. And the more you compare yourself to others, the more you lose sight of your own magic. But the truth is, comparison is a thief. It steals your joy, your creativity, your authenticity. It convinces you that what you bring to the table isn't valuable when in fact it's priceless. Your uniqueness is not a flaw to fix. It's a gift to honor. The things that make you different, the quirks you've been told to hide, the perspectives that go against the grain, those are the very things that make you powerful. When you begin to see your differences as assets instead of liabilities, you unlock a kind of self-respect that can't be shaken by outside opinion. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You begin to realize that your value doesn't increase or decrease based on someone else's approval. Every person has a path, a timing, a purpose that is uniquely theirs. Just because your journey doesn't look like someone else's doesn't mean it's wrong. Growth doesn't follow a schedule. Success doesn't have one definition, and beauty cannot be confined to a single standard. When you embrace who you are fully, unapologetically, you begin to attract the experiences, people, and opportunities that align with your authenticity. The right things find you when you stop trying to be someone you're not. You are not meant to be ordinary. You are not meant to blend in. You are meant to be seen for who you are, not just for what you do or how well you perform. Your thoughts matter. Your voice matters. Your existence is not random. It is meaningful. And the more you show up as yourself, the more you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity has the power to shift rooms, inspire change, and create waves far beyond what you can see. So remind yourself daily, you are incomparable and unique. Don't waste energy trying to replicate someone else's journey. Don't silence yourself just to keep the peace, and don't underestimate the impact of being truly, honestly, unshakably yourself. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be real. Because when you live in the fullness of your individuality, you don't just exist. You lead, you influence, you transform. When you finally embrace the truth that you are incomparable and unique, you stop shrinking to fit spaces you've outgrown. You stop chasing validation from people who were never meant to understand you. And most importantly, you stop questioning your worth. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be a force, to stand tall in your authenticity, and to leave a mark that only you can make. So walk in that truth, own your voice, your path, your power, because when you do, the world doesn't just notice. You give it something real to believe in.